The following programming is sponsored by Mark J. Bernstein. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group. Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mark Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Ange Honorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Mark and Ange.
Good morning, America. How are you? How are you, Ange? That was a real question. That's not a rhetorical question. How are you? You're great. Good. We also have Ryan Sullivan, who is our last guest on Founders Forum, sitting in on the panel. Good.
Appreciate it.
How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good.
Doing good. We also have Jeff with us this morning. I'll give you his full introduction in a minute. So the topic for today is we talk a lot on the show about change. And in fact, a week or two ago, we actually paid Chit Changes. We played David Bowie's song and had a little intro into all the change that's going on. But I've had this thought recently about thinking about our own business and thinking about other things that are going on. Can change be too much? Can there be too much change? And one of the things that occurred to me, and I've prepped our guests on this conversation, but I didn't bring this one up. Anyone remember when Coca-Cola changed their formula? And they came out with a new formula, and it was a total disaster, right? So and people didn't like it because they changed the thing that made them what they were. And they thought, nah, it's just marketing. We have a new improved flavor, and all that didn't work. Two other things that occurred to me that we have talked a little bit about in our prepping for this show, which was an article I read this morning about Madonna in the Atlantic, and it basically just talked about how she's always changing, but what doesn't change for her is change, and that she's always putting herself out there in new ways, and it could be controversial. I won't go into all that because I'll let you all comment on that. But the latest thing, of course, was the way she looked at I don't remember, one of the award shows, and and whatever she did to herself and the criticism of that. And the other person that occurs to me, we talked a little bit about, that I think about a lot about, is Elon Musk. I think about him because I drive Teslas for the last 11 years, really pretty much since they came out in America, and also because I'm a shareholder in the company. And, I get concerned about, as an example, the acquisition of Twitter. Was that a smart thing? Was that good for us Tesla people, or was it too much? Is he going over the top? Whatever that is. So I won't express my opinions because I'm sure there'll be a lot of opinions in all of this. But Ange, give me your thoughts, and we'll go around the circle on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another awesome topic. You pick ones, Mark, that we could probably have 3-hour shows on.
That's true.
But, I think there's two great examples, right? The way I look at Madonna has always been, for 40 years, what's constant with Madonna is that she's constantly reinventing herself. And I think that's what keeps people talking about her. And I think celebrities and even, entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, they are known for taking chances and taking risks and how they reinvent. And some things, end up like a lead balloon, but others, they take off in ways that nobody could conceive of. And I think sometimes if you're not provocative and you don't take those risks, then the things that they do produce, they would never happen. I think it takes a special person, a special founder to step out on a limb the way that those kind of people do, the ones that you just marked, for sure.
Well, thank you for that. I'll ask Ryan your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's the way, when I think about change, I think about speed of change. So it's not that too much change is a bad thing. I just feel like when it happens too fast, it's typically, you just can't keep up, right? Because we could barely keep up when there's just the natural change that occurs without us trying to force any change. And then once we try to force a change, it's such a paradigm shift that it makes it easier. This is kind of an esoteric way of looking at this, but it makes it easier kind of the slower the change happens when you're trying to make it happen. There's moments when you just have to change, you're forced to,
It's a great insight. But and the thing about the speed of change is it does seem like the speed of change has accelerated, especially when it comes to technology and how it's affecting the world. The latest things, AI, and how with that, it's changing at such a rapid pace that it's almost hard for everybody to keep up with it on all sides of it. And Jeffrey Studley is our guest today, and I'll fully introduce him in a minute. But Jeff, your thoughts on this?
Well, change has been the cornerstone of my business for the last 3 decades.
That's why I saved you for last, because I knew you.
we have technology that my team is just finally wrapping their arms around when it becomes yesterday's technology and is a new thing to learn. And it's been the keystone to our growth and our success, and yet a huge challenge at times. So change is interesting.
It's necessary and interesting at the same time, I guess.
Yes, indeed.
So that's a great way to introduce Jeffrey. So Jeffrey Studley is CEO of CPR Media, I believe, right? MultiMedia. I'm sorry, CPR Multimedia, because it's not written on your bio. So, and CPR stands for Computer Projection Rentals, I believe, correct?
Yes, it does. And we changed it to Multimedia Solutions when we went from being strictly a video company to encompassing all of the things that our clients wanted to support the need and use of the video.
So I'll tell you a little bit more about Jeffrey, and then we'll get more into that. So he grew up in the resort region known as the Borscht Belt in upstate New York. So by the way, just as an aside, as a young kid, I had relatives that ran Wiener's cottages in the Catskills. So I, more or less had a little bit of my childhood in the Borscht Belt as well. And he went to the Conell School of Hotel Administration. At one point, he got a call from a cousin in the audio field who saw a monochrome, low-resolution projector at a trade show and said this would be a growth industry. So he had vision, in multiple ways. After thinking, this is Jeffrey talking, I could spend a few days every other week in the D.C. area doing the administrative part of the business. I had to move there because we were at the tip of the spear of this quickly growing industry. He has since stayed at the cutting edge of new developments in the industry using this technology, as he alluded to before, as using the technology for live events. So welcome, Jeffrey. Good to have you here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So you just told the story of how you got into it, and I know there have been challenges along the way in the business. And I understand a successful business today. We've talked offline a little bit about what your future looks like and what your succession plan in the business might look like, et cetera. So it's obviously built into something that's substantial. So how did you get where you are today, and what were the challenges that you faced along the way?
Well, we stayed on the track of being the first that got us launched at the beginning. We looked for all of the new technologies in the display industry, from the original, as you mentioned, CRT projector to the LCD projector to the DMD projector, et cetera, et cetera. And we watched as the speed of change grew ever faster and realized that the way to get in front of people in this world, in our industry, was to be the first. And that became our mantra. I was once running down the stairs at a conference in France where a new projector was being introduced, and racing to beat a fellow from California to be the guy to hand the first purchase order from the Americas to a Barco representative so we could claim to have the first of this technology in the United States. And that's been one of our key success formulas since the beginning.
Were there difficulties you faced in becoming the first each time? I'm sure you had to kind of step over some people who sort of had to, position yourselves to always be the first. What were the challenges with that?
Well, the challenges tended to be seeing other people who sensed what we sensed. Unexpectedly, we weren't challenged by the big guys that were long established in the audiovisual or display markets because they moved slower. We were challenged by other guys such as ourselves, young upstart entrepreneurs who said, hey, this is cool. What's the latest thing going on? And so that was our challenge, to see what was coming and be the first in line to understand it and understand the clientele and the market that was looking for it.
Interesting. So the big guys. I was thinking about that. I was wondering if you were going to say that it's harder to turn the Titanic around than it is to be an entrepreneurial company that's nimble.
One of the things that resulted from that was that the big guys often came to us when they had a client who was reading about this new capability, and they'd call the big guy or the in-house AV company at some hotel or something, and they'd say, "Do you have this?" And after they scratched their head and went online to find out what their potential client was even talking about, they would then call us, and we would say, "Yeah, we have it.
Right.
We can rent it to you. We can provide that service for you." And that was a key part of our success to this very day. We're the guys who understand and have the newest thing, and we become the resource for the guys who have big swaths of the market for other reasons.
Nice. I know the pandemic, obviously, because you do live events. So the pandemic obviously brought some challenges. You want to talk about that a little bit?
It was the most challenging thing we faced in our corporate history. We are a live event company, and I was at a conference of our event production network that CPR was one of the founding members of, and a fellow with offices in Mexico got a call the first day, and he came to the cocktail party that night, and he was a little down looking, and we said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Well, my office is in Mexico, where everyone has to fly to. They're getting tons of cancellations because nobody wants to get on a crowded airplane." Well, he said, we lost $60,000 in bookings today. And we said, "Wow, that's a bummer. Sorry."
Yeah.
The next night, he came down and he was incredibly depressed looking. And he said, "I just had $600,000 worth of bookings cancel."
Ooh.
And all of us went back and called our offices and started to get the same information. So what had happened in a 3-day period in March, we went from being happy to see each other and talk about the industry to leaving and talking about what was devastating our industry. And of course, that put us on the path to virtual. And while it's no replacement for a live event, it was the one thing that was growing in our world. And so we jumped on that.
So you were able to adapt and change to helping, in a sense, you're helping the technology production of the virtual events at that point.
Exactly. Putting up the back screens, doing the video for multi-camera things. A lot of virtual wasn't just, one-on-one. It was, let's try and have this same conference we had last year, but we'll do it in this new telephonic computer way.
Very, very interesting. I know Ange has some questions she'd like to ask you, and I see Ryan's curious as well, and feel free to jump in, but we have a commercial break right now, and we'll be back in a minute. We'll talk about post-pandemic.
When it comes to live events, you only have one chance to get it right. With a commitment to superior customer service and state-of-the-art technology, CPR MultiMedia Solutions has been getting it right for over 36 years. CPR MultiMedia Solutions has the expertise and the technology to wow your audience. Whether it's a conference or a concert, a grand opening or a trade show booth, we have the latest video, audio, and lighting technology to get your message seen and heard. CPR's indoor and outdoor LED screens display your message day or night in high resolution. Fitting into a parking space, our self-powered mobile LED screen trailers show your content like the big screens in a stadium with great audio support. Whatever type event you have coming up, call us at 301-590-9400. We'll help you create an experience for your audience that they will talk about with others. And always remember, that's CPRMMS.com.
Hi, we're back on Founders Forum. Ange, you want to take it?
Yeah, so Jeff, I love to kind of ask and chat with founders in terms of, we understand your story and kind of what led you to build the business that you have, but compared to our topic that we talked about this morning, you shared about how nimble and how you've reinvented the business and being ahead of technology. How has that helped you in terms of your staff, in terms of how have you onboarded them in the past? Talk to us a little bit about what's the tenure of folks and how are you thinking about the future, the future of work and the needs of employees, and how, if anyway, how's that changed for you as you're preparing for kind of the next iteration of the business?
Well, the same thing that attracted a lot of the clients to us attracted some of our best technical employees. They wanted to be putting their hands on the stuff they read about that was going to be the next coolest thing, and we were the guys who had it. So that was a great attraction from the very beginning. We've always been very, what do you want to do with our employees as well? If they come on board and they say, I don't really want to do that, we say, okay, well, you're going to be better doing what you want to do than what someone tells you you have to do. And that's been a pretty successful formula for us. That people who came on and were lighting guys and then saw an LED wall and said, wow, can I shift into that department? Sure, you're motivated. When we don't have to motivate you, you're internally motivated. That's great for us as management. So that's one of the things. We did find a real challenge after COVID when we had to cut back, as everyone in the industry did, on employees, that many of them said later, I like being able to choose what I want to do. So I'm a freelancer now. And we'll call them sometimes and say, hey, we've got this. And they say, well, what exactly is that job about? No, thank you. So that's a new challenge, but it's an opportunity to also find the right people for every application and every job. So when we're making those phone calls and relying more on freelance people, we find that we can often fill that slot more appropriately than when you have a larger full-time staff that you have to get on the job. So that's been a plus and a minus at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think that's super smart. I mean, I think that's a true definition of what the market, in my 30 years of executive recruiting and understanding the changing mindset of leaders and staff and technical people, is giving them that opportunity to build their career and the work that they want to do. So it sounds like you've made it work for both them, and the business. So that sounds like a really smart and an appropriate way to reinvent and to change, to adapt, as we talked about today.
I want to add, Ryan is a technology guy. He's in the podcasting business. He's the CEO of Podcast Principles and works a lot with technology. I think he might have something he wants to ask Jeff.
Yeah, so Jeff, I actually was one of those freelancers, not for you, but I was doing Zoom production by necessity in the pandemic, so I understand a little bit deeper what you're talking about. In terms of switching to the virtual, what was it, like a complete 180 flip, or did you guys have, already have a good idea of the kind of virtual event production, or was it like complete night and day?
It was not complete night and day because a number of our clients were already doing certain virtual technology uses because they were a global company. They might be having a big conference where we had 3,000 people in a ballroom, but they wanted to send it to Europe for the people that they weren't willing to fly over here to the in-person event. So we had a good basis of knowledge and a lot of the technology already, cameras, all of the equipment required to gather the information for a virtual. We just had to become facile with the new technologies of hooking computers up and dealing with limited bandwidth issues that we started to discover and things that hadn't been on our plate before.
Yeah, you need a good internet connection at the very least.
Indeed.
I felt that too.
Jeff, I know one of the things that we had talked originally offline about your business, it's post-pandemic, you mentioned it's harder to get people to come back to work. I know that's one of your challenges. What kind of challenges do you face going forward in the business?
A lot of organizations, because of the virtual turnabout, have made that part of their internal operation. And that's been a bit of a challenge. Some of the things that we used to do entirely for a client, they do a chunk of it now themselves. But we've seen an awful lot of desire, despite our initial trepidation about it, for people to gather together. People like to be in the same room and like to get together, and getting together on a TV screen or a computer laptop is not the same thing as getting together with people from around the world to discuss what they do with each other.
Gotcha. We were talking a little bit before. I was in Las Vegas a few days ago. Got to see the Sphere, which is talk about new technologies, unbelievable. But what I noticed in Las Vegas is there's no shortage of visitors, conventions, conferences. I mean, it seems like people really do want to gather lately. So it sounds like Back to the Future a little bit, maybe in terms of in terms of where your business is headed.
Very much so. We were, as I say, very trepidatious about it, but we have seen that people over the years had built up this whole convention, etc., gathering style, because that's an innate part of human nature, apparently. People want to be next to other people, and a TV screen's not the same.
While you were waiting, not that you were waiting, you weren't sitting still, but during that time, so you went to more virtual and now you're coming back to live. I imagine the technology has changed again while all that's going on for the live events.
For the live events, it changed a lot. One of the major changes, and once again, one of the things we recognized before COVID was LED screens. We have a lot of projectors in our warehouse that go out very infrequently now, because LED screens have become the thing. They don't require the beam of projection light to be unobstructed from the back of the room, or the space to do rear projection that eats up the square footage of a room. It's bright enough to overcome stage lighting and still look good on camera. So our world has changed in a large part from projection to LED as a display technology. And of course, in every area, things have gone from analog to digital, and that continues across the board. Audio, you name it, even digital lighting control, which is an analog sort of technology.
Right. And I'll just go back to Sphere again for a second, because the sound is the most incredible sound I've ever heard. The video is the most incredible video. And I think, let's see if I have the numbers right, but I think that it's some like 57 million light bulbs or something, or 57,000 light bulbs. If I'm not some crazy number.
57 million sounds right, and it's not
57 million.
It's LEDs.
LEDs, right? That's right.
That is
right,
the individual
right.
light generating component.
Because each panel has a whole bunch of LEDs in it. Right. It's amazing. And when you're up close to it, like from the outside, you can almost see that, but you move back a few feet and it just looks like this smooth globe that has all these amazing images, moving images built into them. I mean, the technology really blows my mind. And the sound, there's this thing about everybody sitting in there has different sound, hears it differently, and it's purposely set up that way so they have a different experience. It's much, much different sitting downstairs, sitting in front of the band and having that experience than it is. I was up in the upper deck, and a lot of people said that's the best because you could see like the whole Sphere and you could get all the sound, and the sound was perfect. And the way I judge perfect sound anymore at concerts is if you can have perfect sound and have all the power of a rock and roll band or a hip hop band, hip hop group or act, and still talk and have a conversation at the same time, that's unbelievable. And that's exactly the way it is in there. And it's amazing the rapid technology advances that we're having. Jeff, we like to find out a little bit about the person behind the company. So I know you like to read. What are your favorite books?
Wow. I tend to have lifelong been a science fiction fan because it's so, I guess, indicated where I ended up, which is being at the cutting edge of our industry science. But I like the idea of discovering new things and reinventing my understanding of what's going on around me. If I went back, I would say Bradbury and Heinlein were, great authors. I haven't read much science fiction recently. I'm getting more into, and maybe this is because I'm aging, I'm reading biographical books.
Me too.
Following what other people have done over the course of a lifetime as I look back at what I've done over the course of a lifetime.
By the way, you and I are similar ages. I'm not really a science geek or anything, but as a kid, I loved science fiction as well. So mine were, did you read Tom Swift when you were a kid, when a young kid?
I did not.
Oh, you didn't? Tom Swift is all about these futuristic space race type of things and all that. So it would have been at an earlier age before Bradbury and that kind of thing. But yeah, I loved that stuff as a kid. And, we grew up in the space age, it was like all about sending, the mission to send rocket ships into space and to the moon and all that. So,
we do a lot of work and have done some installations at the Air and Space Museums here in Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian, and I'll go and work as a hand just to get to spend a day amongst all of that cool technology.
Interesting. We were talking offline about Cornell Tech. I should take you there sometime. You should check it out. You would love that because there's so much technology and space related stuff and going on there. One last question for you. If you could speak to your younger self, what advice would you give you looking back?
I would say think farther out. When I was really young, I was about what was going on around me at that time. It was not negative. I love to travel. I love to experience new things, but I didn't have a long-term game plan getting out of college. It's gonna be, let's go to the coolest restaurant city in the world, New York, and I'll figure it out from there. So I sort of got into the long-range planning when I landed in this industry and started to see how quickly things changed, that you had to plan ahead. You couldn't just wake up in the morning and say, oh, what's going on? You had to be thinking, what's going to be going on when I wake up a year from now? And that's been a key to our continued success.
So you would be more of a planner early on.
Yes, have a vision, have a goal.
Yep.
I love experiencing life and travel and all of that, but knowing where you want to end up is part of that, should be part of that.
Excellent. Well, thank you for those words of wisdom to yourself and to everybody else listening. And thank you all for being here at Founders Forum today with us. And we look forward again to seeing you next week. Thank you, Ange. Thank you, Ryan Sullivan. And thanks to our guest, Jeffrey Studley.